Okay, Sawadee Kap. Welcome to you guys. Welcome to the class. Welcome to all of you guys that are tuning in online. This is our introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha course, which is a 3-hour course where I share some meditation with you guys. Then I'm going to teach you guys about what the teachings of the Buddha are and what they aren't. Then, if we have time, and depending on where we are, the additional part of this course is typically sharing the 3 universal truths and the 4 noble truths, which is the very first teaching of the Buddha. But we'll see where we're at by that time, because I know some of you guys are headed out early. But let's just start with our meditation, which is breathing mindfulness meditation. And as you guys heard this morning, I start with the chanting, and then I'll guide you in some meditation. There'll be a period of quiet, and then we'll come out with some chanting as well. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Wat Tung Bhagavannang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, establishing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start focusing the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose, or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวะมนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to make your way out of meditation. Okay, so where I usually like to start with this course of introducing people to the teachings of the Buddha is start where I start with all students, is sharing a little bit with you about how to approach the teachings of the Buddha before we even get into the content of what I have to share with you guys today. It's important to understand that there is no belief in the teachings of the Buddha, and that it's unwise to ever believe anything regardless, but the teachings of the Buddha, it would be unwise to believe anything, because with belief you don't know what's true or false. What you're doing is you're working to get to wisdom, where you know the truth. And you do that through learning, through investigating, through examining, through intellectually understanding. And that's where you need to potentially ask questions and seek clarification and understanding. But then you're also reflecting on teachings. This is where you're looking to independently verify them. You're looking at your own life, your own direct experiences, and trying to understand them through your own direct experiences and independently reflecting on what it is that the Buddha is sharing with you to verify whether it's true or false. Then you're practicing the teachings. This is where you're integrating the teachings into your life and you're starting to practice them. Meditation, yes, but there's a lot of other teachings as well, like right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These are the 8 factors that are part of the Eightfold Path. So you'd like to integrate these teachings into your life, and that's where the real transformation is happening. As you're transforming your mind through the practice, you'll notice that there's more peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy as the mind's awakening to the natural laws of existence. This is what the Buddha taught, is what I refer to as the natural laws of existence. He didn't teach you the way the world should be. and that if everybody follows these rules or these commandments, and then the world will become a peaceful place. He's not giving you rules or commandments. He's teaching you the way the world is. And this is why you can independently reflect on it and verify it for yourself that what he's sharing is the truth. But the unenlightened mind is unawakened to this wisdom. It lacks wisdom. So it struggles in the world. It has difficulties. When you're experiencing anger or sadness or frustration or agitation or annoyance or any of these other discontent feelings like guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, resentfulness, jealousy, any of these feelings, this is the mind struggling and having difficulties in the world. And there's a certain cause that's actually causing that, which we might get to today as part of our class. But nonetheless, the mind is unawakened to these natural laws and understanding how to make wise decisions. When you make wise decisions in the world, you'll experience wholesome results. But when you make unwise decisions, you're going to experience unwholesome results. And when you lack wisdom, you're going to naturally make unwise decisions because you just don't understand what you don't understand, because the mind's unawakened to this wisdom. So you'll experience certain struggles and certain unwholesome results. And we experience the same thing as it relates to the natural law of gravity. When we were growing up, we experienced struggles and difficulties. We didn't understand this natural law. So we fell down, we hit our elbow, we hit our head, we maybe broke open our knees, we broke our toys. We had all kinds of difficulties with the natural law of gravity. So we struggled with this natural law. But slowly but surely, we gradually awoke to this natural law of gravity, that we saw the truth for ourselves, that we can see, there it is. There's the natural law of gravity. And we started learning how to navigate the world through this wisdom of the natural law of gravity. By the time we were maybe 10 or 12 or 14, we were fully awake to this natural law of gravity through this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And we started making wiser decisions. We started tying our shoes a bit tighter. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk. We started to navigate the world differently based on that wisdom. And now we're at the point where we can climb a ladder, we can ride bicycles, we can maybe ride motorbikes, we can do different things that we need to do in order to navigate the world. And we do that with more wisdom, right? And that's because we're fully awake. Well, there's other natural laws in the world besides the natural law of gravity. There's these natural laws that the Buddha taught. And the reason why the mind is having certain struggles and difficulties is because it doesn't understand these natural laws. So the Buddha is teaching you a way that you can now awaken through your own independent verification, through learning, reflecting, and practicing to see the truth for yourself, that your mind is becoming more and more peaceful. But you can't do that through belief, because once again, with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You would like to get to wisdom, where you can understand what the natural laws are. So as you're learning with me, whether it's in this course or any other time you learn, whether it's in the books or videos or retreats or anything you study with me, don't believe anything that I ever say. Don't believe anything you see me write in books. Don't believe anything you see anybody else talking about the teachings of the Buddha. It's important for you to maintain the perspective of you are on your own independent journey to enlightenment, but you're going to need teachers and guides to help you. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment by yourself. Only a Buddha would be able to do that. We're going to talk about what a Buddha is here in a moment. You can get to enlightenment, but you won't be a Buddha by the time you get to enlightenment. You'll be an enlightened being or an arahant. So if you maintain the perspective of you are on your own independent journey, you're actively working towards enlightenment. And a teacher is essentially like a tour guide, pointing out to you the things that you need to be aware of and the things you need to learn, the things you need to investigate. But you're doing that work. So if you decide that you would like to do that work and you do that work, that's where you'll cultivate wisdom. You'll see your mind navigates the world more readily and you'll experience improved results in your life. So we're going to talk about here in a moment what some of those results are. But this is just something to get you started with understanding your ultimate goal is not to believe any of the teachings, but to learn, reflect, and practice. And that's how you experience the real results. To get us started, what I'm going to share with you is what a Buddha is. This is helpful to understand what a Buddha is, a fully, perfectly enlightened one. There's three main criteria that make a Buddha a Buddha. The first one is that they independently get to enlightenment without the help of any teachers or any guides. They figure out the teachings that it takes to be able to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind's purified, it's peaceful, it's calm, it's serene, it's content with joy. It's impossible for an enlightened being to become angry or frustrated or annoyed or agitated. Any of those discontent feelings that you hear me talk about, the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, even the slightest displeasure. It's impossible for an enlightened being to experience those feelings. A Buddha has figured out how to get to that mental state by themselves. That's the first criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. The second criteria is that they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and countless people get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. That a person has the ability to help countless people get to enlightenment due to their deep wisdom. The third criteria is that they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after that person dies. So these are the three main criteria. They get to enlightenment by themselves, they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their teachings, and countless people get to enlightenment, and then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. And then there's some other criteria too. A person who is a Buddha, they have a profound memory, being able to recall countless details about their current life and their past life as well. This is actually what allows them to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. That the average person has a certain capacity in their mind, like a hard drive. You might have 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte hard drive. And when you're at capacity, you need to delete old files in order to store new files. This is how an average individual's mind functions, is there's a limited capacity of what you can remember. This is why, based on what you can remember of your childhood, it's just spotty memories, because you've had to delete old files in order to store new files. Right now, in the last maybe 5 years, you have a pretty good recall of what you've been up to and what you've been doing in the last 5 or 10 years. But if you think back to your childhood, you just kind of have spotty memories. A person who is going to become a Buddha, their mind doesn't function that way. Their mind has an unlimited capacity. They don't have 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. They have an unlimited capacity for storing details, and they have memory and recall of their past lives and certain wisdom that they've been accumulating over multiple lives and over their current life too. An individual who's going to become a Buddha will have a significant detail about their childhood, understanding intricacies and aspects of what they've experienced all throughout their life. So they put all that wisdom together in order to ultimately get to enlightenment in their last life. So they have this profound memory. They can also quickly determine the condition of somebody else's mind, and they do this only in order to help that person be able to get to enlightenment. So an individual who is a Buddha would be able to help countless people get to enlightenment because of their deep, profound wisdom, but also because they have this ability to observe the condition of other people's minds and then share teachings with them that are actually going to help them. But a Buddha would only share teachings with somebody if that person asked for help. They're not going to just go out into the world and push their teachings on other people. And then a Buddha is going to have a deep practice of their own teachings. They're going to be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. They're not going to teach one thing and then do something different, right? They're going to show you an example of what an enlightened being is, because a Buddha understands that they're teaching just as much through their actions as they are through their spoken words. Right? You can teach somebody through your spoken words. You can teach people that way pretty readily, but you teach a lot more through your actions and the way you conduct yourself in the world. So a Buddha understands that his students are learning from his spoken words, but they're also learning from his actions as well. So a Buddha is going to be a living, breathing, walking example of his teachings. So these are the criteria of what a Buddha is. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be enlightened where you won't be experiencing any of those discontent feelings, and your mind will be peaceful and joyful permanently for the rest of this life. But you won't be meeting these criteria. This is a very rare individual that meets these criteria. Even the Buddha himself talks about how rare it is. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So it's very rare for a Buddha to exist in the world. So now what I'm going to share with you guys is what are the teachings of the Buddha, helping you guys to understand a bit of this. But I see that my live stream isn't functioning right, so let me fix that. Okay, so sorry for that, all you guys that are on the live stream. This is what I was just talking about here. You can screen capture this if you like, and you can see this is the topic that I was just talking about with the Buddha and what a Buddha is. But now we're going to move into sharing what the teachings of the Buddha are. And I'm broken this down into different sections. So the teachings of the Buddha are a path to attaining enlightenment and purification of the mind. As you're learning, as you're reflecting, as you're practicing, you're purifying the mind of certain pollutions that the Buddha discovered. They're referred to as the 10 fetters. These are 10 individual pollutions, but we also refer to them at a higher level as well. And as you purify the mind, you experience these benefits in others as well. You'll notice that there's this mental state that you can attain. It's called enlightenment, that you can attain in this life or at death. And if you attain this mental state, you'll notice that the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy for the rest of this life. You won't experience any discontent. It's not possible for the mind to experience that anymore because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing it, those pollutions. If you eliminate and eradicate those 10 fetters, there's no condition in the mind. There's no cause in the mind that'll produce discontentedness. You've eradicated it. So it's not possible for you to experience it. It's just physically impossible for an enlightened being to ever be angry about anything. You'll no longer experience any of these discontent feelings, the sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, jealousy, resentment, stress, anxiety, all of these and others. It's not possible for those feelings to arise anymore because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing it. You'll notice that there's a high degree of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of mind because the mind's been fine-tuned. You've optimized the mind. When the mind's polluted with the 10 fetters, you won't be able to experience a high degree of focus, concentration, memory, and clarity of mind because the mind's polluted. But when you uproot that out of the mind, you'll notice that coming into the mind, those various qualities. And then you can use those qualities in your day-to-day life, whether it's work or your personal or professional life, you'll be able to use those qualities. You'll notice that you'll have deep wisdom with politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect for all beings. Right now, you might have a challenge with that. Maybe if somebody's polite with you, you can be polite with them. But maybe if someone's disrespectful or impolite to you, maybe you really struggle being polite, kind, friendly, respectful to that person. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you can be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody because your mind doesn't have those pollutions any longer. And you'll find that it's very easy to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody with this deep wisdom. You won't be causing harm in the world. You won't be causing harm to others, and therefore harm won't be coming back to you. But you need to learn how to do that. You can feel like you have all the best intentions in the world, and then you do something and you might feel like it blows up on you because you don't even realize what you don't realize. That's the unknowing of true reality, that if you're putting harm out into the world, harm will come back to you. But you can think that you have all the best intentions, but if you haven't learned the natural laws of what right intention is, then if you're not practicing that, you're going to experience the unwholesome results from all the various aspects of what you're choosing to do in the world. Then you'll notice your personal professional relationships will be conducted with ease, that you'll notice that these relationships will really blossom. When your mind's polluted and you're causing harm to others, then this harm's going to come back to you. But when your mind's purified and you're not causing harm to others, you'll notice that your personal professional relationships will improve and be conducted with ease, and they'll really blossom. There won't be anybody that you have a difficult relationship with or struggles in your relationship with. You'll be able to be at ease in all your relationships. The reason why is because you're eliminating craving, anger, and ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality. These are referred to as the 3 poisons, or the 3 unwholesome roots, or the 3 fires. What craving is this selfish desires, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. And if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, all of these very painful feelings. So it's craving, desire, attachment. It's the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection that is causing the mind to experience the anger. When the mind becomes angry, this is where the bitterness, the hostility, the resentfulness comes up in the mind. And there's usually one of 3 things that an individual is going to do. When you feel that anger and that frustration, you feel uncomfortable with that feeling. So what you'll tend to do is push people away out of your life. or you'll push the situation away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But when you push people away, that doesn't actually solve the problem, because the true problem is the craving inside the mind. Then the other thing that someone might do when they misunderstand the problem is they will maybe be bitter and harsh and hostile or aggressive towards others. And now through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, you might be bitter, harsh, and hostile towards them, and it drives people away from you, out of your life. Or the third thing you might do is put your expectations on people and try to control people to do things your way. These are the three things that people tend to do, is when they feel those uncomfortable feelings of anger and sadness and frustration and other things arising, they'll push people away. They'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or they'll put their expectations on people, trying to control people to do things your way. And in this situation, with the mind's lack of wisdom and those pollutions in there, there's kind of like fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer people that you can spend time with, because it's only a matter of time before somebody does something you disagree with. If you spend time with someone long enough, eventually you're going to see that you might disagree with something that somebody does, and you might become angered or bitter and harsh and hostile. So this is just creating situations where you can't live with people harmoniously. So as long as there's this craving in the mind, then there's going to be this anger that is arising. And where all of this is coming from is the third unwholesome root, or the third poison. This is called ignorance. This word ignorance is a translation from the Pali that the Buddha uses. Well, this word ignorance today is kind of like a derogatory word. It's a degrading word, a diminishing word. We wouldn't really talk to anybody. We wouldn't call somebody ignorant. So a Buddha, a fully perfectly enlightened one, even just an enlightened being, isn't going to be degrading and disrespectful to somebody. So I use this word ignorance just because you'll see that used by other people. But a better way to think of this is the unknowing of true reality, that the unenlightened mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It has confusion or misunderstanding. It lacks insight. It lacks wisdom. So as long as the mind misunderstands what the problem is, then it will continue to have that problem. So the only reason why craving and anger continues in the mind is because of the ignorance. This is the unknowing of true reality, lacking wisdom of the natural laws of existence, that the mind doesn't understand the Four Noble Truths and the Three Universal Truths and the Eightfold Path and the Five Precepts and all these other teachings that the Buddha taught. It doesn't understand how to train itself to get to this liberation and this peace and this joy. So what you're doing is you're purifying the mind of these three poisons, which go deeper into the 10 fetters. This is kind of like a layered effect. The Buddha kind of layers his teachings, and the deepest layer is the 10 fetters. But then at a little bit higher level is the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires. More about what the teachings of the Buddha are is these natural laws of existence, or helping you to awaken to the natural law of Gama. Some people refer to this as karma. Karma is the Sanskrit language. Gama is from the Pali language. If this translated to just one English word, I would just use that word because it'd be much easier for everyone to understand. But it's essentially the same thing. Karma and Gama, it's the same thing, just a different language. This natural law is natural law that's affecting you at all times, whether you're aware of it or not. But if you don't have awareness of it, you're going to make unwise decisions that produce unwholesome results. The Buddha is introducing you and guiding you to understand this natural law. And through learning, through reflecting, through practicing, you'll be able to see the truth that this natural law exists, that there's no being who's overseeing this natural law and deciding who gets punished and who gets rewarded. The natural law of Gama isn't even about punishments and rewards. Oftentimes that's the way people think of it, as punishments and rewards, or mystical, magical things, or some being that's overseeing this natural law. This natural law is a functioning at all times. It's just like the natural law of gravity. Nobody turns it on and nobody turns it off. Right? The only thing you can do is understand this natural law, and now you can navigate the world more readily with this wisdom, that you'll make wiser decisions that produce wholesome results in your life. But with a lack of wisdom of this natural law, you'll make decisions that you think are the very best intention, that are very well intended, but because you're lacking wisdom of the natural law, you're putting out unwise decisions that's producing unwholesome results in your life. So by learning, reflecting, and practicing, you get to wisdom, and now you can awaken to this natural law of Gama. That's what we're talking about when we say awaken to enlightenment. You're awakening to this natural law of Gama, and all the other natural laws too, but this is the main natural law. So the Buddha didn't explain the way the world should be, but instead he explained the way the world is. And by understanding understanding how the world is, you'll navigate the world more readily. That's what the Buddha is teaching you. And then you're training your mind to get to this peace and this joy through acquiring wisdom and practicing these natural laws of existence. That's what eradicates the pollutions of the mind and ultimately gets you to the peace and to the joy and the calmness, the serenity and the joy. More about what the teachings of the Buddha are is the teachings of the Buddha are timeless, meaning what he taught 2,500 years ago is just as applicable today as it was back then, because he taught these natural laws, and these natural laws haven't changed. So he spoke very clear, very concise, and very precise, right? So his teachings aren't kind of stuck in a cultural past, so to speak. Instead, he just explaining the natural laws. He's explaining to you the way your mind works, the way it functions, the natural laws around you. Essentially, he took human psychology and he boiled it down to common language that just anybody could understand if you take some time to learn it and understand it. So his teachings, he spoke very clear, very concise, and very precise. His teachings don't need to be changed or modified or adapted. If you understand what he actually taught, you can see that they're just as applicable during his lifetime as they are today. Then he did teach the cycle of rebirth. He taught these 5 realms of hell, animal, afflicted spirit, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. And these are also things that you can independently verify. I typically teach people to set aside the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence when they first get started, because what happened in the past is in the past. What may or may not happen in the future is in the future. It's important to focus on the core central teachings to awaken your mind. That's what you would like to ultimately focus on. But he did teach these 5 realms and the cycle of rebirth for specific reasons. And I mentioned it this morning when we were talking that if you start awakening your mind using the core central teachings and you're starting to remove the pollution out of your mind and you're starting to have memories of your past lives, that could really shake you up if you didn't understand the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence. Or as you're removing this pollution of your mind, if you're starting to experience communication from beings from hell or the afflicted spirit realm or the heavenly realm, this could really shake you up. Or if you started to being able to see these beings, some people can see them. They're formless beings. They don't have physical form, but some people can actually see them because they're right here in the same time and space as us. So if you could experience any of these things where you're having recall of past lives, if you're experiencing communication with these beings, or you're starting to see them, it would really shake you up if you didn't understand how the world is. So the Buddha is explaining the way the world is, and you may not know how to independently verify these things right now, but as you get deeper into the teachings, you'll be able to understand how to do that. The Buddha did teach about God. Sometimes people think that the Buddha didn't teach about God. You might hear people say the Buddha rejected God, or the Buddha denied the existence of God. This is not true. If you look at his teachings and in his own words, he mentions God. He talks about God, but he doesn't put God as a central role in the teachings, because God's not the one who determines whether you get to enlightenment or not. God's not the one who controls the world. God's not the one who controls what you experience and what you don't experience. So he didn't put God as a central role in his teachings because you're the one who's at the central role of his teachings. He's teaching you how to get to enlightenment. But he does teach about God. And in different times, in different programs that I teach, I will share those teachings with you guys and help you understand. Some people, they would like to have a relationship with God, but based on what they've been taught in the past, they might have been taught to fear God, or they might have been taught that God punishes you and rewards you and all these other things. This isn't actually true. Or they might have been taught that God controls the world and there's a certain destiny or certain fate that you have. This isn't actually true. So if you'd like to have a relationship with God, I can teach you how to do that and still get to enlightenment. But if you're not interested in having a relationship with God, I can teach you how to do that too and still get to enlightenment too. So it's up to each individual to decide what they would like to do. But just understand that the Buddha did teach about God. He's just not a central role in his teachings. And there isn't any rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship as part of the teaching. So you're not worshiping God as part of the Buddhist teachings. Then some things that I usually share about what the teachings of the Buddha are is that they're assembled in what's referred to as the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is the largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha. This is 45 volumes of books. This is based on the discourses that he gave during his life. During his life, from the age of 35 to 80, he taught for those 45 years. and his teachings were oral. The ability to write the teachings down didn't exist in that region of the world. It existed in China, but it hadn't made its way to that region of the world where the Buddha lived. So they didn't actually write his teachings down until after his death. And this is why they use chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory and be able to remember them. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't forget the teachings that it took for you to get to enlightenment. The wisdom that it took for you to be able to get to this enlightened mental state, you will be deeply practicing that. You will be embodying that. You'll be a living, breathing, walking example of what an enlightened being is. You won't forget what it took for you to get to that enlightened mental state. So by the time someone has gotten to enlightenment, they will deeply remember the teachings. And after the death of the Buddha, about 500 enlightened beings came together. There were countless that existed during his lifetime, but 500 of them came together and they started documenting the teachings of the Buddha. And we refer to this today as the Pali Canon. There's 45 large volumes. This book series that I share is a consolidated version of the Pali Canon, that in 13 volumes you get the real kind of core teachings that you need to be able to get to enlightenment. Because what you'll see in the Pali Canon is there's a lot of repetition. You can read like 100 pages in the Pali Canon, and there's like just paragraph after paragraph being repeated over and over and over again, with like one word or one sentence being repeated. So this book series consolidates that and helps you to be able to understand it in a more reasonable time frame. If you were to read the 45 volumes of books, these books are about maybe 10 centimeters thick. That's about 4 or 5 inches thick. It would probably take you a good 10 years to read them all, and then let alone understand it and actually reflect on it and practice it. It would take you a really long time. So having a consolidated version really helps you because you get those golden nuggets of his teachings. So this book series is titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. It's available for free on our website. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed versions here at the temple or through Amazon. So the largest, most complete collection of the teachings of the Buddha are called the Pali Canon. And then the last thing I'll share with you before I open up the questions and then move on to new content is that the way that I think about the teachings of the Buddha is it's to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But understanding to heal from what hurt you is to understand that what hurt you is inside your own mind. It's not the outside world that's hurting you. It's actually inside your own mind. And when you learn this and you reflect on it to verify it, and then you practice it, you'll see the truth that it works. So understanding what is actually causing the painful feelings, then you'll be able to actually eliminate them. So you can eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing the painful feelings so that you can heal from what hurt you so that you never need to ever hurt ever again. Okay, so do you guys have any questions here? Or if you guys online have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. When you press the button, the light will come on just for a brief second, but then they'll go off, and then it should be working. My son tested all of them during the lunch break. Yeah, they're all working.
Can you send what this compilation that you've created to a Kindle?
The books?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're on Amazon as a Kindle.
Okay, cool.
Or if your Kindle can read the PDF, you can download it for free and just read it as a PDF. But if you'd like a Kindle version, they're on Amazon as a Kindle.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions here. All right, you can keep that with you if you like. So now that you've kind of learned a bit about what the teachings of the Buddha are, let's talk about what the teachings of the Buddha aren't. This is a way to help you understand what the teachings of the Buddha are, is to explain what the teachings of the Buddha aren't. The teachings of the Buddha aren't a collection of beliefs. They're not doctrine. They're not concepts. They're not opinions or views. that will produce a pleasant afterlife if you just believe in these teachings, and an unfavorable afterlife if you don't believe in the teachings. So he didn't teach a bunch of views and opinions. He's teaching the natural laws of existence. He didn't teach a bunch of beliefs. You'll never see in the words of the Buddha where he says, just believe me, just believe me. You'll never see that ever. He says just the opposite. Come investigate my teachings. Come examine them, right? Because he knows if you examine them close enough, it led to his enlightenment, so it'll surely lead to yours too, right? So this belief, doctrine, concepts, opinions, and views, that's not what the Buddha taught. It's a collection of the natural laws that you can learn, reflect on, to independently verify, and practice. The teachings of the Buddha, in my opinion, are not a religion. Depending on how you think about religion, in my opinion, is usually where you have an organization with one person at the top, and that person is responsible for disseminating teachings through a large population of people, and now people are taught to do these things. And this organization is usually teaching of what you should do and what you shouldn't do, kind of like rules and commandments. There might be certain rites and rituals and ceremonies or worship. And people typically in a religion will believe that if everybody follows these rules and these commandments, that then the world will become a peaceful place. But everybody in the world needs to follow these rules and commandments or certain beliefs behind these things. If this is the way you think about a religion, that's not what the Buddha's teachings are, that they're not a religion. Because there's not just one person at the top of Buddhism that's telling everybody else what they should do and what they shouldn't do. There are no rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship in the teachings of the Buddha. You'll never see that in his original teachings, even though now you might be in certain places where they're doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and they're attributing it to the teachings of the Buddha. That doesn't mean that's what the Buddha actually taught. It's those individuals that are choosing to do those things and associating it with the teachings of the Buddha. But you'll never see any rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. You'll see just the opposite. He encourages people not to do these things because it doesn't lead to wisdom. The ultimate goal is to get to wisdom. That's what's going to awaken your mind. And there's no amount of water I can sprinkle on you that's going to give you wisdom. There's no amount of strings I can tie on your wrist that's going to give you wisdom. There's no amount of anything, of rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship that's going to produce wisdom. The only thing that you can experience in terms of wisdom of rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship is that they don't work to produce wisdom. That's a piece of wisdom that you can see. So if you think of religion this way, the teachings of the Buddha aren't a religion. When the Buddha awoke to enlightenment, he didn't say, I discovered a new religion. That's not what he said. He said, I discovered a better way of life. Right? And then he just made himself available to help people understand what that better way of life is. The teachings of the Buddha are not punishments and rewards. If you've been taught this way in various traditions, you might hear things in the teachings of the Buddha like the hell realm, the heavenly realm, things like this, and right away you might be thinking punishments and rewards. That's not the way that the Buddha taught. That's not what you'll see in his teachings. He's teaching this cause and effect, or this action and result, so that you can understand true reality. He didn't teach any kind of mystical or magical things or superstition or auspicious things. That's not what he actually taught. Everything he taught you can independently verify. The teachings of the Buddha aren't something to attempt to force others to do or try to convince others to do. Everything on this path to enlightenment is about your journey. This is why you don't see people standing on the street corner beating a drum trying to force other people to come learn the teachings, or standing with picket signs trying to convince people to learn the teachings. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are. This is for you to learn, develop your practice, and then experience the improvements, the condition of your mind. This isn't about you going out and trying to convince other people to do these things. The teachings of the Buddha aren't these short, catchy phrases that will produce some sort of benefit in your life if you learn these short, catchy phrases. If you are on social media and you see some kind of quote that is attributed to the Buddha, 99.9% of the time, if you do the research, it's actually not even the words of the Buddha. That it's something that somebody else thought of or said, and they're attributing to the Buddha to give it more emphasis. But it's not actually the words of the Buddha. So if you just believed those things, you would be misled and misguided on the path to enlightenment. And then lastly on this topic is the teachings of the Buddha, they're not stuck in this cultural past that degrades or judges others. Sometimes people say that, the Buddha degraded women and he looked down on women. No, you will never see that anywhere in his teachings whatsoever. He taught people to respect everybody. He taught that everybody is equal. He didn't degrade women. He didn't degrade certain people. He taught that everybody is equal and we should be loving and kind and compassionate and warm and generous and friendly and respectful to everybody. So you won't see this kind of like, cultural past, and his teachings are stuck in that cultural past. Sure, he uses stories that people would understand during that time frame. Like he uses a lot of stories around farming because people were farmers back then and people would understand those analogies. Where today we might use analogies about a mobile phone or a computer or a car because people are familiar with these kinds of things. Where back then it was more about farming and stuff like that. So the stories that he would use to help people understand the teachings are related to farming and stuff like that. But even today, we have farmers today, and we can understand farming culture and the environment in farming. But his teachings aren't based on culture. Culture is not the natural laws of existence. So the natural laws of existence cuts through the culture and allows you to be able to see true reality. Okay, you guys have any questions on this? It's already on.
I just want to say that it kind of makes me cringe when I see something like on Instagram, dance, play, and go with the flow, the Buddha. I was like...
Yeah. You'll see a lot of quotes attributed to the Buddha, but there's actually a site you can go to. It's called fakebuddhaquotes.com. I think it's a .com. I can't remember. I haven't been on there in a while, but you can type in like certain phrases that you see. And this person, he's a monk. He's gone out and researched all the different quotes, and he shows you and he tracks it back to the actual origin of that quote. A lot of times the quotes are from like the 1800s or 1700s or even modern quotes. You'll see that he traces it back to like the 1940s or the 1980s where somebody had said that, and it wasn't actually even the Buddha, but on a mem, it'll have the Buddha's name. So this is unfortunate that this is the case, but this is impermanence, right? Not everybody is going to be sharing the original teachings of the Buddha, but if you don't believe anything and you do the work to research, you can then see the truth for yourself.
I feel like the more one is acquainted with the actual words of the Buddha, the more when you hear something that's not from the Buddha, that doesn't bring yeah, you can tell yourself. Like if you've read enough of the Pali Canon, like when you
see a quote, you'll know. Like, the Buddha doesn't talk like that. You'll know for yourself. Okay, so we still have some more time because you guys have about another hour. Usually what I do at this point is there's been questions and we take a little break, but it's only been about an hour. We can continue on if you guys like, since you have a limited time. Usually what I do is I share with students the first teaching of the Buddha, which is the Four Noble Truths. This is where you establish right view. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to finally understanding what's causing your own discontent mind. And then that way you can actually solve it. You can actually fix it. And I'd walk you through in a way that you can learn, you can reflect, independently verify, and you can practice to be able to see the truth for yourself. Is this something that you guys would like to learn?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah? Okay. All right. So the Four Noble Truths is part of the Eightfold Path. It's called right view. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha. You would need to learn this teaching of the Eightfold Path inside and out, backwards and forwards, up, down, left, right, in order to be able to get to enlightenment. You would have no ability to get to enlightenment without learning this inside and out. And in that course that I'm teaching on next week, I'm going to be going through the entire Eightfold Path in its entirety using the words of the Buddha. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm going to be teaching the moral conduct section because I'm doing a 3-part series over the next 3 Sundays. And last Sunday, I did the first wisdom section. Tomorrow, I'm doing the moral conduct section. Next week, I'm doing the mental discipline section. But this week coming up on Tuesday, I'll be going through the entire Eightfold Path using the original words of the Buddha. But this Eightfold Path, it starts with right view. Right view is like the foundation. Without right view, you wouldn't be able to make any progress, anything in the teachings of the Buddha. So what I'm going to share with you guys is this very first teaching of the Buddha to be able to understand what we refer to as right view. But in order to understand the Four Noble Truths and establish right view, where you can have this breakthrough to finally understanding what's causing your own discontent feelings, you would need to first understand the three universal truths. These are building blocks to be able to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. We refer to these as the three universal truths and the Four Noble Truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true, and other people know that they're true too. But in order for you to really get the benefit, you need to know they're true. And that's why you don't believe what I share. You learn, reflect, and practice. So let me show you how this works, the way you should approach all the teachings of the Buddha. This first one is called the universal truth of impermanence. This is where you're understanding that things are constantly changing, that things arise, they change, and then they fade away. This is called impermanence, or a conditioned object. A conditioned object arises, it changes, and it fades away. This is impermanence. Okay? There are things that are called unconditioned objects. Pretty much everything around you is a conditioned object. So when you look around the world, anything you can see, anything you hear, anything you smell, anything that comes in contact with the tongue, any bodily things that come in contact with your body, like physical objects, or any mental objects, anything going through your mind, this is all impermanent. There are things called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects don't arise, don't change, and don't fade away. Enlightenment is that way, that once you attain it, it's permanent. And then also the natural laws of existence. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. These are unconditioned objects. But everything else in the world that you see around you is all impermanent. They are conditioned objects. They arise, they change, and they fade away. They're constantly changing. Okay, so this is a little bit of the intellectual learning about the universal truth of impermanence. But now I shared with you, don't believe me. You're not interested in believing any of the teachings of the Buddha. So now you start moving into reflection, and you start trying to reflect to see, is what David just said true? Is what the Buddha taught on this topic of the universal truth of impermanence true, or is it false? You do that through your own direct experience, through your reflection. You look around the world around you, and you try to see if you can find something that's permanent. And if you can find something that's permanent, this isn't a universal truth. So what I suggest you do is start with something that you're familiar with, like the human body. You're very familiar with this human body. You could ask yourself, is it permanent or is it impermanent? If this body's permanent, then that means it's never changed your entire life. If it's impermanent, then that means it's constantly changing. So what would you say? Is this physical body permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? We started out as a fetus in the womb of our mother. We came out. We've been constantly growing and changing. We got teeth, then they fell out, then they came in, then we got cavities. Our hair grows. We lose our hair. We get gray hair, right? We get a little bit of extra fat here or there. All these different changes are happening to the physical body. What about your relationships? Are your relationships permanent, meaning you have all the exact same people in your life that you've always had in your life? Or are your relationships impermanent, meaning people are coming and going in and out of your life? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? Okay. What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent?
It's always going up. Impermanent.
Always going up? That's impermanence, right? So some bank accounts go up, 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 up. Some go down, 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 down. Some people go up and down, up and down, up and down, right? This is the impermanent nature of a bank account, right? What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? So we could go on and on and on and on. And this is very important to deeply soak into the mind as a building block to understand the Four Noble Truths. You could walk down the sidewalk and see a crack in the sidewalk. That's impermanence. You could see a fence and you could see that the paint is fading. This is impermanence. You can look all around the world and see impermanence everywhere, right? We started out with a certain number of people in the class, and now we have a different number of people in the class. This is impermanence. Things are constantly changing. Okay, so you'll need to soak that into the mind and be able to see that impermanence is all around you everywhere. The second universal truth is called discontentedness. Some people refer to this as suffering. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha somewhere else, you might have heard them use the word suffering here. I'm going to explain to you what this universal truth is, and then I'm going to explain to you why I don't use the word suffering. But let me first explain to you what it is. When people talk about this universal truth, they refer to it as dukkha sometimes. This is the Pali word that is used in the Pali Canon. The word dukkha translates to discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. When the Buddha taught about dukkha, he taught that there's a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a feeling that is neither painful nor pleasant. Essentially, what he's doing is describing the unenlightened mind for you and what the unenlightened mind experiences. It experiences conditioned feelings. A conditioned feeling is a feeling that you form based on some condition. So the mind experiences pleasant feelings, painful feelings, feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. And those pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. Painful feelings are things like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. And then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's quite painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category. But shyness is a good example, right? It's not pleasant, it's not painful, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Or say you were in public transportation and somebody came and sat really close to you and your body was touching their body, you'd probably say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant. Your mind's kind of like dissatisfied or uncomfortable, right? This is what the neither painful nor pleasant is. So the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness explains the full spectrum of this. Okay, what this is where the mind is experiencing conditioned feelings. So as an unenlightened being, you might wake up in the morning and see that it's sunny outside and you get happy, you get excited, you get elated. This is called a conditioned feeling. That based on the condition that it's sunny outside, the mind now forms a feeling of happiness, right? The mind is now happy based on the condition of the sun. But then you go take a shower and you come outside planning to go for a hike or go outside on a bike ride, and now when you see it's raining, you might be sad or frustrated or agitated or annoyed. That's because that feeling of happiness, it was a conditioned feeling. It was based on the condition of the sun. But the sun is impermanent. So therefore, if you form your feeling of happiness based on the sun, your feeling of happiness is impermanent too. So when that condition changes, then your feeling is going to change as well, right? So this is what an unenlightened being is experiencing. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is beyond this, that you're no longer experiencing conditioned feelings. Your mind has been trained to no longer base its inner feelings on some condition. That an enlightened being, they're already happy, they're already joyful before they ever woke up in the morning. They see it's sunny outside, sweet. Let's go outside and go hiking. We should go hiking, but let me go take a shower first, right? Go take a shower. You come out, it's raining. Okay, well, it's raining outside, so I guess I'll go to the mall. Maybe I'll invite my friends over for some dinner. I'll cook them dinner. Maybe I'll stay home and read a book, right? You have all these different options that you can do. You can just change your plan. But if you're craving, if you're wanting and expecting that sun to be permanent, then when the mind is experiencing the impermanence, you'll struggle and you'll have difficulties because of that. That's where the painful feelings will arise. So we'll get into that more when we talk about the Four Noble Truths. But what the Buddha is explaining here is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. And now you can independently verify this because you've done the intellectual learning a little bit here of understanding what this universal truth is. The Buddha is saying universally, all unenlightened beings are going to experience these three feelings: pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. So you know that your mind's currently unenlightened and you experience some of these feelings or others. You can actually take all the different feelings that you've experienced in your life up to this point and you can see, does this describe it? Does this represent what you experience? Do you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant? Is there any feeling that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories? So this is what discontent, discontented, or discontentedness is. It represents the full spectrum of feelings and emotions that the unenlightened mind experiences. Now, some people refer to this as suffering. If you learn the teachings of the Buddha in various books or various locations, you might see people talk about that. To me, the word suffering explains the painful feelings really well. When you experience anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, you might say you're suffering. But when you're happy or excited, would you say you were suffering? Probably not. Or that person you don't know comes and sits close to you on public transportation and your body's touching their body. What you're experiencing there, would you say that you were suffering? Probably not, right? You're not suffering there. So that word suffering is only explaining 33% of what the Buddha taught on this very important topic, right? That means you're missing 66%. So if you continue to use the word suffering, you would be missing 66% of his teachings. And that would be very challenging for you to ever experience the results of what it is that he taught if you're missing 66% of his teachings. Because the ultimate goal is to eliminate your discontentedness. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll experience happiness and joy, but it's unconditioned happiness and joy. There's no condition that needs to be present in order for that to be experienced. But in the unenlightened state, you're going to still experience conditional happiness. And then the more conditions you have, the fewer and fewer experiences, the lesser and less time that you can have where the mind's actually happy. So by eradicating the causes that are producing this discontentedness, then you can actually experience the permanent peace and joy, which the Four Noble Truths are explained to you. But now let me explain the third universal truth, and then I'll open up to any questions that you guys have. And for those of you guys online, you guys can ask questions as well. This third universal truth is called the universal truth of non-self. This is actually explaining to you a solution to one of the problems that the Buddha describes in the mind. Remember, there's 10 fetters. There's these 10 pollutions, which you learn as part of the teachings of the Buddha as you get deeper into them. The very first pollution is called personal existence view. This is where the unenlightened mind falsely believes or has the misunderstanding or the confusion or the misperception that this body is you or this mind is you. That the mind clings to this physical body or to this self-image or this self-identity that's in the mind, thinking that this is who you are. And now you'll get shaken up when you experience either agreeable or disagreeable contact related to the physical body or related to the mind. So for example, if you've ever been in a social setting and you spilled spaghetti sauce or chocolate ice cream on your clothing and you got embarrassed, this is your personal existence view. This is where your mind wasn't being able to be experiencing the self-image in the world in the way that you wanted to be perceived. The mind wanted to be perceived in the world a certain way, and now when you weren't being perceived that way, the mind didn't like that. It got embarrassed, it got frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Or another thing with the self-image, say that somebody compliments you and says something like, wow, you look so handsome in that color of shirt, or that shirt really brings out the color of your eyes, or wow, your hair looks really beautiful today. You'll get all these pleasant feelings based on the condition that somebody's giving you a compliment. But because of impermanence, it's only a matter of time before somebody says something negative and degrading and disparaging about this physical body. So if your mind clings to this physical body, thinking that this is who you are as a person, now when somebody says something negative or degrading or disparaging, then you'll experience the painful feelings where you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. And this is because of the personal existence view. Or if you've ever looked in the mirror and you saw a mole or a pimple or a gray hair, or you were losing your hair, or you ever experienced a little bit of fat here and there and you were shaken up by that, that's because of the personal existence view. The mind's clinging to this body, wanting it to be permanent. Okay, and then there's a certain self-identity in the mind where the mind's clinging to the I am. I am Canadian. I am American. I am an Aussie. I am Chinese. All this I am. I am in terms of ethnicity, your culture, your sexual orientation, your nationality, maybe your job or occupation. There'll be this I am in the mind. And when you cling to that identity, again, if you hear something complimentary, you'll experience pleasant feelings. But if you experience something degrading or disparaging, then you'll experience the painful feelings. And you can't control what other people say, what other people do. So if you cling to this identity of I am Canadian, or I am Chinese, or I am American, when you cling to this identity and somebody is very complimentary about that, you'll get those pleasant feelings. But say you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody says something negative and degrading and disparaging. You can't control what they say. All you can do is control your own mind. So if they say something negative and degrading about any identity that you have in your mind, you'll experience painful feelings as a result. Or say you've ever been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you identified with, I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend. Well, now when you guys broke up, you might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship again, because the mind wasn't comfortable in this role of single, that the mind was identifying with, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife. And if your mind identifies with that, when you separated from the relationship, you might have really struggled during that time frame and wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because of it. Or if you've ever had a job or occupation, like I am a police officer or I am a lawyer, and you identified with this as who you are as a person, maybe when you lost your job because you got injured, or maybe you got laid off, or the company was going out of business, or any number of things, you might have really struggled when you lost that job, or you're no longer working at that job because part of your identity wasn't intact anymore. Sometimes people come to Thailand, here in Thailand, they'll come to Thailand to find themselves. They're looking for themselves. They might say, I don't even know who I am anymore. I need to go find my true self. Well, what the Buddha is teaching you in the universal truth of non-self is that there is no self. He says there is no you there. But the problem is that the mind's confused. It has the misunderstanding. It thinks that this body is you, or that this mind is you. And as long as the mind clings to this body or this mind, thinking this is who you are, you'll get shaken up in situations where you have agreeable or disagreeable contact related to the self-image or the self-identity. So this is a little bit of the learning of the universal truth of non-self. Sometimes people understand it at the beginning, sometimes not, because we've been taught all through our life to associate with this body or this mind as who we are. But let me give you some ways to reflect on this so that you can see that there is no self, okay? Think about your childhood when you were a child, when you were a teenager, when you were in early adulthood, and then now. Think about your character, your personality. How did you view yourself when you were a child, a teenager, early adulthood, and now? Was it exactly the same during all those phases in your life? Or have you been viewing yourself differently in those 4 phases of your life? What would you say? It's been different, right? So there you can see that there's no permanent self. There is no self. Let me give you some other examples. If your arm was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm, are you less of a person? No. Okay, you say no. How about you? Are you less of a person? Seems the same person there. Yeah, it's just with less use of a hand and an arm, right? So here you can see intellectually, you understand that this body isn't you. Because if I asked you that question, if your arm is amputated, are you less of a person? If this body is you, you would say, yes, I'm less of a person. But you understand intellectually that this body isn't you. But the mind is confused. It has this misunderstanding, this confusion, where if somebody says something negative and degrading and disparaging about your physical appearance, you would perhaps get angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling because the mind's confused. It's having this misunderstanding. It hasn't realized non-self yet. It doesn't understand what non-self is, and it hasn't fully practiced that. And then here's a third way that you can independently verify this. Point to yourself. Where are you? Okay, so you're pointing here, here. Okay. This is common, right? Some people will point here, some people will point here. Okay, so what I share with students is, okay, look at what you're pointing to. You're pointing to a shirt. Okay, so if I took off my shirt and I hung it up like this and I pointed to it, is that me? Is that who I am? This shirt? Is that who you are? That shirt you're wearing? Is that you? No, that's not you. Okay, so throw away the shirt. Where are you? Someone might point again. Okay, what are you pointing to? You're pointing to skin. Let's take off the skin. Let's hold up the skin. Is that you? That skin you got right there? Is that who you are? Are you that skin? No, you're not the skin. Okay, so let's throw that away. Where are you? Someone might point. Okay, What are you pointing to? Ribs, muscle tissue, organs, fluid. That's what we got in there, right? None of that is you. None of those bits and pieces and parts are you. But the confusion, the misunderstanding, the misperception that the mind has is that this body is you. So you're going to need to get to the point ultimately where you realize non-self, that you realize that this body is not you, this mind is not you, and by continuing to cling to it, it's just going to produce discontentedness in your life. Okay, so this is the three universal truths of impermanence, discontentedness, and non-self. These are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths, to establish right view, which I'm going to teach you here in a moment, but I'd like to pause and see if you guys have any questions on these three universal truths yet, before we move on.
Yeah, I sometimes heard the second one as like unsatisfactoriness or like it's imperfect sometimes, but I like the discontentedness because I think it explains it a little bit better and goes into, like you said, the pleasant, non-pleasant things. It's not quite as, I guess, dukkha is, in the beginning you get stuck on dukkha being just painful, maybe.
Yeah, in my opinion, the unsatisfactoriness explains the third one really well. The neither painful nor pleasant. That's the unsatisfactoriness. Because when you're happy, like if you got a chocolate ice cream as a kid, you wouldn't say you were unsatisfied. Right? So those pleasant feelings are coming from getting what you want, right? But the mind's discontent. Have you ever been so excited that you like tripped and fell, or like fallen down or broken something because you've been so excited? That's because the mind's discontent. It's shaken up. It's experiencing that excitement that is experienced as part of that conditioned feeling. So that's why I use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, because it explains all three rather than just one or the other. Yep, you're welcome. Okay, for those of you guys online, you can ask questions by putting your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically. I'll be able to see your question here. I think the mic's not on. Yeah, the mic's not on. It must have got turned off. Here, I'll show you. You can grab another one. Yeah, so now use it. Go ahead. Check. Oh, it's not working?
Yeah, the light's going on, then off.
And then it's going off right away? Okay.
It comes on the screen and then it turns off.
Oh, okay, yeah, the batteries are dead on this one.
I think that when, if I want to actually do this experiment, but often when people speak of themselves or point to themselves, they point to their heart. Which, as according to my understanding, it's like the center of our being in Buddhism is often referred to as the heart or citta. So it's just interesting that could be correlated.
So the Buddha never taught that the heart is the center of who you are. When the word citta is being used, this is referring to the mind. And in the Buddhist teachings, and then also here in Thailand, they sometimes point to their heart or they touch the heart as the location of the mind. But in reality, the mind is non-physical, it's non-tangible. It doesn't have a physical location. Where in the West, we will tend to point to our head, where Thais and people who study the teachings of Buddha might point to their heart. But there's other cultures that think about the mind as being outside the body. In reality, there is no physical location for it because it's not physical. And even if we knew, which we can't know because it's not physical, it doesn't change anything. It still needs to be purified. The mind still needs to be trained and cultivated. So the heart isn't the center of you and who you are. The heart is just an organ that's helping to keep the body alive. It's really nice when people say things about that the heart is like of course we think about it in terms of love and emotion and all these other things. But what you're looking to get to is strip away some of these things that your mind might be holding on to and just look at true reality. What is the heart? The heart is this physical structure that's pumping blood through it.
It's not that heart that I'm speaking of. Not the physical heart. I'm not speaking of that heart.
Okay.
And one of my Thai teachers described chitta as heart mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What heart are you referring to? What's the other heart?
Center of consciousness. Yeah. I have a little bit of influence from Advaita Vedanta, where they speak of the center of consciousness as being the heart, but not the physical heart, obviously.
If you can hold the mic up, they'll be able to hear you online.
Well, I'm influenced by a Thai teacher who said that described chitta as kind of, or maybe it was Achan Mahabua said it's kind of a fusion of heart and mind, like heart, not physical heart, but heart as in direct perception, feeling, direct apperception of reality, So anyway.
These things are all different. So it's important to, if you're going to get to enlightenment, to understand true reality. That while you have had influences from other people and your mind might be holding on to certain things right now, if you experience any of these feelings, these discontent feelings, you know your mind's unenlightened. So there are certain things that your mind is holding on to that isn't the truth. You're going to need to be willing to let those things go and bring in wisdom to be able to awaken to enlightenment. What you're talking about with feelings and perceptions and these other things, this is referring to what we call the 5 aggregates. This isn't part of the heart. So I understand where you're coming from and understand what you're sharing, and maybe this is something that your mind is thinking right now. But if you'd like to penetrate into what the Buddha actually taught and be able to see the truth and awaken to enlightenment, you're going to need to be willing to peer into that and realize that what your mind is currently holding on to in some situations isn't the truth. And it's good to be objective about that and be able to see that so that you can gain the wisdom to be able to understand and let go of these things that aren't actually the truth and be able to bring in with wisdom through learning, reflecting, and practicing. Because the mind will tend to hold on to all kinds of untruths that is producing these discontent feelings. Otherwise, if your mind fully understood the truth, you wouldn't experience these discontent feelings. So you'd like to get to the point where you set aside these things, but you do that by bringing in the wisdom to be able to see true reality. So what you were starting to talk about with feelings and perceptions is referred to as the 5 aggregates. And if you'd like to talk about that, we can go into that in more detail, but that doesn't have anything to do with who you are as a person. It's actually just the opposite, that none of these 5 aggregates are you. And when you were talking about chitta, what chitta is this is a Pali word that refers to the mind. It means literally consciousness or the mind itself.
Yeah, it's a whole realm of discussion. There's probably Achan Mahabua's book Straight from the Heart, and and that's what he defines as the center of consciousness. But it's also just semantics at a certain point.
Well, if you're interested in getting to enlightenment based on the teachings of the Buddha, not this other person, however you pronounce that, oftentimes people will learn from a teacher who isn't actually teaching what the Buddha taught. And they might have such a respect and admiration for that person. They might hold on to what that person has told them, but they haven't really penetrated and investigated into the words of the Buddha to be able to see the truth of what the Buddha actually taught and what he didn't teach. So while you may have a certain respect and admiration, you might have learned certain things from this person, what you're sharing isn't actually what the Buddha taught. And because of that, if your mind continues to hold on to that, you wouldn't be able to actually experience what the Buddha is teaching you as enlightenment. But whether you choose to penetrate deeper into what the Buddha taught, it's your choice. I would encourage you to be able to see the truth that the heart isn't you. It's not who you are. It's a physical organ. That's all it is.
I'm not talking about physical organ.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not. It could be my stomach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, none of that stuff is what the Buddha taught, though. That's my point. That's what I'm sharing with you. None of that is the teachings of the Buddha. None of that. Yeah. Okay?
Well, I've learned from some IT too, so I respect what you're saying and also what they're saying.
Okay. Well, it's up to you to decide. You have to penetrate into the words of the Buddha. And like I mentioned, if your mind's experiencing any of these feelings, then what you currently know isn't 100% the truth. Okay, good. All right, so any questions on the three universal truths? No questions? Okay, so one more thing to share with you guys before we go into the Four Noble Truths. This is a building block to help you understand. This is called craving, desire, attachment. Also wants, expectations, holding, grasping, clinging. This is a mental longing for something with the strong eagerness. The mind's chasing after the objects of its affection, wanting things to be permanently satisfying. The mind is longing, yearning, thinking the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases and chases and chases and chases. This is called a craving, desire, attachment. If you've ever been in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes or a new phone or a new computer or a video game and you're like, oh, I just got to have that. Yes. Oh, I just got to have that. Or a new boyfriend or new girlfriend or a new job or more money. It's not the object itself. That's not what the craving, desire, attachment is. It's not the object. It's inside the mind. It's the longing, the yearning. It's the chasing after the objects of your affection. That's what a craving, desire, attachment is. You guys know what I'm talking about here? You experience this? Okay. This is a craving, desire, attachment. So now, 4 statements that are going to help you to understand what the problem is in the unenlightened mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. The problem is described in the first noble truth, that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. This is those conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. This is the problem in the unenlightened mind, because when your mind's shaken up, you can't make wise decisions. Your mind is uncalm. You're not able to get to wisdom and make wise decisions that's going to produce a wholesome result. So that is the problem. The second noble truth is explaining the cause of that problem. That discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. I'm going to say that a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples to help you understand. So the discontentedness, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant, is caused by craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, wanting things to be permanent when, in fact, everything around you is impermanent. So, for example, if you chase after something and you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. You get happy, you get excited, you get elated. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, and others. So if you've ever been in a relationship with somebody, when you guys first got together, like a boyfriend or girlfriend, you're probably really happy, really excited. This person's showing you affection. You guys are going out on dates and going to the movies, you're going to dinner. You might have been intimate, having intimate contact with each other. You might have went to the park. You might have had great conversations with each other. This was very pleasurable for you. You felt all this pleasant feelings based on the condition of having this boyfriend or this girlfriend. And now, over time, as the relationship dissolves, now the relationship's over. And now the mind's angry or sad, or maybe feeling lonely or bored. This is because the mind's craving permanence, wanting this relationship to be permanent, when in reality, this relationship was always impermanent. What's causing the painful feeling is the craving, the desire, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things to be a certain way. Again, and if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. If you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. This is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. So the mind's craving and desiring, wanting things to be a certain way. When somebody dies in your life and you grieve, it's not the love that's causing that. It's the mind craving permanence and wanting grandma and grandpa to be permanent, or mom or dad, or brothers and sisters, or friends or family members. You're not a bad person if you're grieving or feeling miserable when somebody dies. It's just that the mind's attached, that it's craving permanence. If grandma's alive, I'll be happy. But if she's dead, I'll be sad. This is a conditioned feeling that the mind is experiencing. And as long as there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, your mind will be shaken up. You'll experience this discontentedness. Okay? Here's another example. Say you bought a brand new car. This is the perfect car. You've always wanted this car. You buy this car, you drive it off the lot, you're driving through your neighborhood, everybody sees you in this car, you're feeling so successful, so accomplished. You park your car, you go inside, you come out and you see a scratch on your car. You might get frustrated, you might get angry, you might get irritated. It's not the scratch that's causing that. It's not the person who scratched your car. It's your mind craving, desiring, longing, yearning, wanting this car to look permanently beautiful, when it's not possible. It'd be wonderful if nobody ever scratched your car, but that's not the world that we live in. You live in an impermanent world. And remember, the Buddha is explaining the way the world is, not the way the world should be. He's explaining the way the world is. So when you see this scratch, if you get angry or irritated or annoyed or frustrated, it's your own craving, desire, attachment. It's the longing, it's the yearning, it's the wanting this car to look permanently beautiful. This car, at the very least, the paint's going to fade, the upholstery is going to fade, there's going to get rips and tears in it perhaps, you're going to need to replace the tires and the window washers. This car is impermanent. It's a conditioned object. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. Right? This is the impermanent nature of the car. But if the mind's craving for it to be permanent, you'll be frustrated and agitated and annoyed when you experience the impermanence of this car, right? So what the Buddha is explaining to you in the second noble truth is that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings, that it's craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things to be a certain way. That's what's causing the mind to be discontent. It's not something outside. It's not the external thing, because that's what the mind will think in the unenlightened state when it doesn't understand the Four Noble Truths, is it'll think something external is causing your discontent feelings. So this is why the mind will tend to push people away or push the situation away, because it's perceiving the problem as being outside of you. So you push people away, or you push the situation away, or you will become bitter and harsh and hostile towards other people, right? And this is where you're damaging your relationships. Or you will put your expectations on people and you try to control people to do things your way. And this is just a misunderstanding of what the problem is and what the cause of that problem is. The cause of the problem is inside your own mind. Your craving, your desire, your attachment, wanting things to be a certain way. So here you can independently verify this for yourself. Now what I've just taught you is that it's your craving, desire, attachment that's causing your discontent feelings. That if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. So now look at a time when you've recently been angry or frustrated. It might have been this morning, it might have been yesterday or last week. Look at that same situation with these new wisdom, with these fresh eyes. Look at the situation. Maybe at that time you were trying to blame somebody else for the problems that you were experiencing, because this is very common that the unenlightened mind will blame somebody else for what they're experiencing. So instead of doing that, look internally. Look at your own mind. What were you craving? You were desiring. You were wanting. That if you would have got what you wanted, you would have got pleasant feelings. But if you didn't get what you wanted, you got angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling, right? So here you can independently verify it. If you're having trouble verifying it, let me know and I will help you, because we can talk about your situation and I can help you see how your own mind is causing these discontent feelings. The third noble truth is explaining the solution to this problem, that if the second noble truth is explaining the cause of the problem is craving, desire, attachment, that's what's causing the discontentedness. The third noble truth is explaining the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. All you got to do is eliminate the cause. If you eliminate the cause, then your mind isn't going to experience discontentedness anymore, right? And there are certain tools and certain techniques that are going to help you to eliminate this. There's breathing mindfulness meditation, there's generosity, but in reality, it's the fourth noble truth that is explaining the complete solution, which is the Eightfold Path. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. That's the complete perfect plan that's going to explain to you exactly how to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. And this is why it's so important to learn with the original words of the Buddha, not just a teacher that you might highly respect or you might think of as being high. It's important that you learn with the original teachings of the Buddha, and you learn, you reflect to independently verify, or you respect, or that you practice. Because you shouldn't just believe somebody. You need to be able to independently verify the teachings. Even the Buddha shares this himself. He says, don't just follow somebody just because of their position or their seniority. Instead, be sure that you penetrate into something. So when you learn this with the original words of the Buddha, you can see the truth of what's leading to your discontentedness and how to eliminate it. It's the Eightfold Path that's going to teach you how to actually do that. And it's organized into these three sections: wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. The reason why the Buddha taught this moral conduct is because whenever you're putting out harm is coming back to you. So these aren't rules, these aren't commandments that he's teaching you as part of the moral conduct. He's teaching you the natural law of Gotama, of cause and effect, or action and result. By you choosing to learn the natural laws, you can see what harms you're causing, and now how to eliminate those by practicing the good, wise, wholesome teachings. And now when you're not causing harm to others, harm won't come back to you. So building up your wisdom, building up your moral conduct, and training your mental discipline, you'll be able to control the mind because your mind's disciplined. Because when your mind's angry and sad and frustrated, you don't have discipline of the mind. You don't have control over the mind in those situations. So just to kind of bring you back to what we talked about towards the beginning of this course is, what are the teachings of the Buddha? It's to heal from what hurt you so that you never ever need to hurt ever again. Okay, so this is the Four Noble Truths. This is the problem, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. Any questions on this?
Testing. For the second noble truth, do you classify like aversion as part of craving, or like do you call it as like the other side of the same coin, or like are you, or is it? Because I notice you're not mentioning it in this particular description of it. So I'm just wondering, like how would you further elaborate on that for avoidance, aversion, fear, stuff like that? That's maybe not directly identified as craving, clinging, but maybe the opposite or part of the same. I don't know. You kind of get where I'm going?
Yep, I understand. So aversion is a symptom of the cause of the problem. The cause is craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things to be a certain way. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. But if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings. And now what it does is it pushes away. That's the aversion. What's causing the aversion is the craving, desire, attachment. So it's because of craving that the mind has aversion. If it wasn't for craving, there wouldn't be any aversion in the mind. So aversion is part of the painful feelings that the mind is experiencing, the anger, the sadness, the frustration, and now feeling uncomfortable. The mind says, let me push that person away. Let me push this situation away. And that's what's going to solve the problem. But it doesn't, because you haven't solved the true problem. The true problem is the craving, desire, attachment in the mind. When you solve that, that's what will solve the painful feelings of anger, sadness, and frustration. Pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, putting your expectations on people, that doesn't solve anything, because that's not the real problem. The real problem is within one's own mind. But when someone has wrong view because we're talking about right view. When someone has wrong view, they're going to perceive the problem as being outside of them. And that's why they think that by pushing this away, that's going to solve the problem. But you can see that that doesn't, because every time you've ever pushed someone away in your life, you still get angry, you still get irritated, you still get annoyed, you still get agitated, because you haven't actually solved the problem. All you've done is pushed a person out of your life. That's all you've actually done. So aversion is a symptom of the same cause, which is craving, desire, attachment. That's the actual cause of the problem. If it wasn't for craving, there would be no aversion. Okay? So what I usually do at the end here is just kind of share with you guys, if you guys would like to continue to learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment, there's all these options for you. There's books, there's audiobooks, there's podcasts, there's videos, there's quizzes, there's all these different things that you can use to be able to help you. And they're all available and offered to you openly and freely. You can go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, and you'll be able to access the books, the audiobooks, the videos, the podcasts, and the quizzes. There's even in-person and online classes, courses, and retreats you can learn here at the temple, but also I live stream and open up Zoom so that you can join any of these programs that we offer here at the temple, no matter where you are in the world. And if you can't attend live, they're recorded, so you can watch them even after the fact. There's ongoing programs in person and online. One is called the Group Learning Program. This program is every Sunday and Wednesday. And what we do is we go through this first book of the book series, chapter by chapter by chapter. We just restarted this a couple of weeks ago from the very beginning. So it's a perfect time to be able to join and come each Sunday at 9 a.m. And then I also teach it at 9 p.m. from home as well. So here I have a live class and I live stream it as well at 9 a.m. on Sundays and Wednesdays. But then at 9 p.m. I do it at home as well. So depending on what time zone you're in, there'll be available class for you. And then where you can't attend live, then there's the recording for you to be able to benefit from that. And then there's the Words of the Buddha, the Pali Canon and English Study Group, which I teach on Sundays at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. as well. And that's where we go through volumes 2 through 13 of the book series over a 1.5 year program. The group learning program is a 7-month program. And then you can also have personal discussions, either in person or online. If you're here in Chiang Mai or any other city or country that I'm traveling to, you can meet with me privately and we can sit down and talk. If you would like to meet online, like say you're traveling around the world and you're not in the same city as me, you can get on our website and you can schedule an appointment, and there you can meet with me in Zoom one-on-one. You can see that you schedule it, and that's all available for you at no cost. And then there's a Facebook group where there's over 16,000 people that are in there. You know, not everybody's active, of course, but you can go there to the Facebook group and you can ask questions there as well. So you can get help by asking questions in class. You can post a question in Facebook. You can send me a private message through all the different ways of messaging apps and emails, or you can schedule personal guidance and I'll be able to help you to be able to progress on the path to enlightenment. But remember, you're the one that's doing that work. Okay? So anything you guys would like to discuss related to these teachings, those of you guys online, you can ask questions by putting those into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'll do then is just end class by thanking you guys for coming to join, whether you're online or here at the temple. Thank you guys for joining for today's class. If you would like to learn more, as I mentioned, there's all these different options for you to be able to learn more. It's up to you to decide what works best for your life and kind of integrating these teachings in. What I suggest for people is that they come to classes like this, either online or in person, that they read a little bit of the book, the first book, about 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, just read a little bit, trickle it into their mind. And then the third thing they do is do some meditation. And these 3 things will gradually build up your practice to integrate the teachings into your life. That you're coming to classes, that you're reading the book 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, and you're meditating. This is what's going to help build up your practice to be able to awaken to this enlightened mental state. So perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.